I slept with my mother-in-law while my wife was giving birth. She found out, destroyed my career, and now I'm watching another man raise my son. My son was born on a Tuesday in March. I wasn't there. I was in a hotel room 2 miles from the hospital, sleeping with his mother's mother. My wife called me 3 times during the delivery. I didn't answer. When I finally walked into that room and saw her holding our son for the first time, she looked at me and smiled. She had no idea. Not yet. It would take her 4 more days to find out. And when she did, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just went quiet in a way I had never heard from her before. And then she started destroying me. Piece by piece. Quietly. Permanently. And by the time I understood what was happening, there was nothing left to save. That was my first mistake. Thinking the worst was already over. My wife's name is Megan. We had been together for 5 years. Married for 2. We met through a mutual friend at a barbecue. Nothing dramatic. No lightning bolt. Just 2 people who liked each other enough to keep calling. Megan was warm. Genuinely warm. The kind of person who remembered small details about everyone she met. What they were stressed about. What their kids were doing. She asked questions and actually listened to the answers. People gravitated toward her without realizing why. I loved her. I want to be clear about that. This wasn't a dead marriage. This wasn't 2 people going through the motions. We were happy. We were building something. And I burned it down anyway. Megan's mother is a woman named Diane. I had known Diane since before I knew Megan. That is important. Diane and I had a history that predated the marriage, predated the relationship, predated everything. I am not going to dress this up. Diane and I had slept together once before, years before Megan and I ever met. It was meaningless at the time. A party. Too much to drink. The kind of thing 2 people do and then never mention again. I thought it was buried. I thought it was done. It wasn't done. Here is what I didn't know then. Diane had been waiting. Not consciously, maybe. But the door had never fully closed on her end. And when I married her daughter, that door didn't disappear. It just moved somewhere I couldn't see it. The pregnancy was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. Everyone said that. Megan was glowing. She was reading the books. She was planning the nursery. She was excited in a way that made me feel like the luckiest man alive. And I was already in trouble. It started about 4 months into the pregnancy. Diane came over more often. She offered to help with things around the house. Megan loved it. She was tired all the time. Having her mother nearby felt like a gift. Diane and I would end up alone. Megan would be resting, or at an appointment, or asleep early. And Diane would be in the kitchen, or on the back porch, and we would talk. At first it was normal. Family stuff. How Megan was doing. How the pregnancy was going. But then it shifted. Slowly. The way these things always shift. A comment that lasted a beat too long. A look that meant something different than it should have. That was my second mistake. Letting it feel normal. I knew what was happening. I am not going to pretend I was some naive idiot who didn't see the signs. I saw them. I felt them. Every time Diane walked into a room, something in my chest moved in a way it shouldn't have. And instead of putting distance between us, instead of telling Megan what was happening so we could set boundaries, I did nothing. I did worse than nothing. I leaned into it. The first time Diane and I were alone together with real intent was about 6 weeks before the due date. Megan was at her sister's house for the weekend. Diane came over to check on the house. That was the excuse. We both knew it wasn't the reason. We talked for 2 hours. We drank wine, which I knew I shouldn't have been drinking that much of either, given everything. And at some point the conversation stopped being a conversation. I remember thinking, in the middle of it, that this was insane. That Megan was carrying my child. That Diane was her mother. That if anyone found out, my life would be over. I thought about it. And then I kept going. Here is what I told myself afterward. That it was a one-time thing. That it meant nothing. That Megan would never know. That the baby was coming in 6 weeks and everything would reset and this would just be a stupid, ugly mistake that I would carry alone for the rest of my life. Every single one of those things was wrong. It happened again. And again. I don't know how many times total. Enough that it stopped feeling like a mistake and started feeling like something else. Something I was choosing. Every single time. Consciously. With full knowledge of what was at stake. Diane never pushed. She never made demands. She never said she loved me or wanted me to leave Megan. She just made herself available. And I kept showing up. That was my third mistake. Thinking that because she never asked for anything, it wasn't costing me anything. The night Megan went into labor, I was supposed to be at a work dinner. That was the cover story I had built. A dinner with clients across town. Megan had the hospital bag packed. Her sister was on standby to drive her if I wasn't back in time. I was not at a work dinner. I was at Diane's apartment. Megan called me at 11:42 at night. I saw her name on my phone. I looked at it. I looked at Diane. And I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 11:51. I let that one go too. The third call came at 12:08. By then Megan was already in the delivery room. I know this because her sister called me right after, her voice tight and angry, and said, "Where are you?" "She's having the baby right now." I left Diane's apartment. I drove to the hospital. I got there at 12:47. Our son was born at 1:14 in the morning. I was in the room for the last 20 minutes of labor. Megan was exhausted and relieved and crying, and when the baby came out and they put him on her chest, she looked up at me and said, "We did it." I nodded. I held her hand. I looked at our son and I felt something crack open inside me that I thought was love and joy and the weight of becoming a father. It was guilt. I just didn't recognize it yet. For 4 days, everything seemed fine. Megan was recovering. The baby was healthy. We named him Oliver. I held him and I watched him sleep and I told myself that this was what mattered now. That whatever had happened with Diane was over. That I was going to be better. That Oliver deserved a father who showed up. I believed that. Or I wanted to believe it. The difference didn't matter. On the 4th day, Megan found out. I still don't know exactly how. I have theories. A text I didn't delete quickly enough. A charge on a credit card that didn't match the work dinner. Something Diane said or didn't say that tipped Megan off. Megan has never told me how she knew. And at this point, she will never tell me anything at all. What I know is this. I came home from the hospital that afternoon. Megan was sitting in the living room. Oliver was asleep in the bassinet next to her. She was completely still. Not reading. Not on her phone. Just sitting there. Looking at nothing. I said her name. She didn't look up. I sat down across from her. I asked if she was okay. She looked at me then. And her face was not angry. It was not sad. It was something I had never seen on her before. It was a kind of total, absolute calm. Like someone who had already made every decision she was going to make and was just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. "I know about Diane," she said. 3 words. Flat. No inflection. No question mark. I opened my mouth. I don't know what I was going to say. It doesn't matter. Because she held up one hand. Just one hand. And she said, "Don't." That was it. One word. And something closed behind it. Something permanent. She didn't ask me to explain. She didn't ask how long it had been going on. She didn't ask if it meant anything or if I loved Diane or if I was sorry. She didn't want any of those things. She already had what she needed. What she needed was to know that I was exactly who she now understood me to be. I sat there for a long time after she stopped talking. Oliver was sleeping. Megan was looking at him. And I was sitting in the wreckage of my own life, watching my wife look at our 4-day-old son and already calculating how to protect him from his father. That was the moment. Not the hotel room. Not Diane's apartment. Not any of the nights I chose to lie. The moment it was truly over was that afternoon. In our living room. When Megan held up her hand and said, "Don't." And I knew, with a certainty I have never felt about anything else in my life, that she meant it. Not just don't talk. Not just don't explain. Don't. Everything that came next was already decided. Megan did not explode. That is the thing people don't understand when I tell this story. They expect the screaming. The thrown dishes. The dramatic confrontation where everything comes out in one brutal night and then you either fix it or you don't. That is not what happened. What happened was worse. Megan went quiet. And then she went to work. Week 1. The first thing she did was move Oliver's bassinet into the guest bedroom. She slept in there with him. I stayed in our bedroom. She didn't tell me to leave the house. She didn't change the locks. She just reorganized the space so that I was alone in a room at the end of the hall, and she and our son were somewhere else entirely. I lay in that bed at night listening to the baby through the wall. Oliver would cry sometimes. Megan would get up and feed him. I could hear her voice, soft and low, talking to him. And I would lie there and think about getting up. Walking down the hall. Offering to help. I didn't. Because every time I tried to interact with Megan during the day, she looked at me like I was furniture. Present. Occupying space. But not something she was going to engage with. Week 2. Megan called her lawyer on a Monday morning. I know this because I was in the kitchen when she made the call. She didn't hide it. She didn't step into another room. She just sat at the kitchen table and made the call while I was standing 3 feet away, pouring coffee. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready to move forward." That was all she said. Then she hung up. She looked at me once. Not angry. Not sad. Just looked. And went back to feeding Oliver. I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand and I realized she had been ready before I even knew she knew. That was my 4th mistake. Assuming I was the one with the timeline. Week 3. I came home from work and found a box on the porch. Inside was a letter from Megan's attorney. It outlined the terms of a temporary separation agreement. I was to move out of the house within 7 days. I was to have no unsupervised contact with Oliver until a formal custody arrangement was established. The letter was polite. Professional. It read like a business transaction. It was a business transaction. Megan had turned our marriage into one. And she was better at it than I was at anything. I called her that night. She didn't answer. I texted her. Nothing. I called her sister. Her sister said, very calmly, she doesn't want to talk to you right now. Please respect that. Please respect that. Like I had done anything in the last 2 months that deserved the word respect. Month 1. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy. A place I found in 2 days because I didn't have the energy to look for anything better. I brought a suitcase and a box of clothes and nothing else. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt physical. Like the silence had weight. I sat on the edge of the bed the first night and I thought about Oliver. 4 weeks old. In a house I could no longer enter without permission. With a mother who had every reason in the world to make sure I never came close again. I called Megan every day that first week. She never answered. Not once. Then I discovered something I wasn't prepared for. And it changed everything. Month 2. I found out from a colleague what Megan had done at my workplace. Her name was Janet. She had called my supervisor directly. Not to complain. Not to make a scene. She had called to share information. Specific information. About my character. About my behavior. About the kind of man I was. She didn't lie. That is the part that made it so effective. Everything she told them was true. The affair with Diane. The fact that it happened while Megan was pregnant. The fact that I had missed the birth because I was with Diane. All of it. True. All of it devastating. My supervisor called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon. He didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He just sat there and looked at me for a long time and then said, I can't have you here anymore. I tried to explain. I tried to say it was personal. That it had nothing to do with my work. He shook his head. It has everything to do with your work, he said. Because I trusted you. And trust is the only thing I hire people for. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing it didn't stop it from happening. I was out by the end of the week. Month 3. The custody hearing was the worst day of my life. Not because of what was said. Because of what wasn't. Megan's attorney presented a timeline. Every date I had been with Diane. Every lie I had told. Every missed call during the labor. Every night I had chosen someone else over my pregnant wife. It was all there. Documented. Precise. Like Catherine's envelope from a nightmare I hadn't even had yet. Megan sat at the other side of the courtroom. She didn't look at me once during the entire hearing. Not once. She looked at her lawyer. She looked at the judge. She looked at Oliver, who was in a carrier on the floor next to her feet, sleeping through the entire thing. She did not look at me. My attorney tried to argue that the affair, while inexcusable, did not make me an unfit parent. That I had no history of violence or substance abuse. That I wanted to be in Oliver's life. The judge listened. She considered it. Then she looked at me and said something I will never forget. Mr. Callahan, you demonstrated a consistent pattern of choosing your own desires over the well-being of your family during the most vulnerable period of your wife's life. The court has no reason to believe that pattern has changed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I had changed. I wanted to say I would never do anything like that again. But I was sitting in a courtroom 3 months after my son was born, unemployed, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, with no savings and no credibility and no one in that room who believed a single word I might say. So I said nothing. Primary custody went to Megan. I got supervised visitation. 2 hours, twice a week, in a designated location. A neutral space. A social worker present. Like I was a threat. Like my own son needed to be protected from me. And the brutal part is that the court was right to do it. I had earned every single restriction. I had earned all of it. I looked at Oliver during one of those visits. He was 3 months old. He couldn't focus on my face yet. He didn't know who I was. He looked at me the way he looked at the wall, or the lamp, or any other thing in the room that wasn't his mother. I held him. He didn't cry. He just stared past me. And I thought, this is what I gave him. Not a father. An absence with a name. That was the line I couldn't get past. The one that broke something in me that therapy has never fully put back together. Month 4. Diane disappeared. Not dramatically. Not with a goodbye or an explanation or any of the things you might expect from someone who had been part of your life for months. She just stopped being reachable. Her phone went to voicemail. Her apartment was empty when I drove by. A neighbor told me she had moved out 2 weeks earlier. No forwarding address. I found out later, through someone in Megan's family who let something slip, that Diane had moved out of state. Quietly. Completely. She had told no one where she was going. I don't know if she felt guilty. I don't know if she understood what she had helped me destroy. I don't know if she thought about Oliver at all, her own grandson, the child whose life she helped fracture before he was old enough to understand what a family was supposed to look like. What I know is that she left. And she left me with everything. Month 5. The shame was not loud. I want to say that again, because it matters. People imagine shame as this explosive, dramatic feeling. It isn't. It is quiet. It is the way a room changes when you walk into it. The way conversations stop. The way people look at you and then look away, not out of anger but out of something worse. Pity mixed with disgust. That is the closest I can describe it. Word had spread. Not because I told anyone. Not because there was a public confrontation. It spread the way these things always spread. Someone told someone. Someone else confirmed it. Within 2 months, everyone in my professional circle knew exactly what I had done. And not a single person reached out to ask my side of it. There was no side to ask. The facts were the facts. I had slept with my mother-in-law while my wife was pregnant with my child. There is no framing that makes that acceptable. There is no context that softens it. It is what it is. And I had to live with it being what it is. Month 6. I found a new job eventually. Smaller company. Lower pay. No one there knew my history, at least not at first. I kept my head down. I did the work. I didn't socialize. I didn't give anyone a reason to look too closely. I visited Oliver when I was allowed to. 2 hours. Twice a week. He was growing fast. He had Megan's eyes. Every time I saw him, he looked more like her and less like me. Or maybe I was imagining that. Maybe I wanted it to be true, because it would mean he might escape what I had made him. Megan and I did not speak. Not directly. Not once after that afternoon in the living room. Everything went through lawyers. Every decision about Oliver. Every schedule change. Every holiday. All of it filtered through legal documents and neutral third parties. I tried, once, to send her a letter. A real letter. Handwritten. I wrote about Oliver. About how sorry I was. About how I understood if she never forgave me. I mailed it to the house. Her lawyer sent a response the next day. A single paragraph. It said that any further direct communication would be considered harassment and would be brought before the court. I never wrote again. Year 1. I found out about Marcus through one of Oliver's supervised visits. The social worker mentioned, casually, that Oliver had started calling someone Dada at home. She said it like it was a normal developmental milestone. Which it was. For other people. His name was Marcus. Megan had started seeing him about 4 months after the separation. A quiet guy. Steady. The kind of person who shows up when you need him too. Megan's sister told me this, not cruelly, just matter-of-factly, during a phone call where I had asked how Oliver was doing. He's doing great, she said. Marcus is really good with him. Marcus is really good with him. I sat with those words for a long time. Not because they were cruel. Because they were kind. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just telling me the truth. Someone else was raising my son. Someone who was there every morning. Someone who put him to bed at night. Someone who was building the relationship I had forfeited. Year 1, Month 6. The visitation schedule changed. Megan's attorney filed a motion to reduce my contact hours. The argument was that Oliver was becoming more attached to Marcus and that my visits were causing confusion and distress. I could have fought it. My lawyer said I had grounds to push back. That 2 hours twice a week was already minimal. That reducing it further would effectively remove me from Oliver's life. I sat in my apartment that night and thought about it. I thought about standing up in court and arguing for more time with my son. And then I thought about what Oliver actually experienced during those visits. A stranger holding him. A room he didn't recognize. A man whose face meant nothing to him yet. I thought about what I had done to earn that. I didn't fight it. The new schedule gave me 1 hour, once a week, supervised. Oliver was 14 months old by then. He had started walking. He would toddle around the visitation room, picking up toys, completely uninterested in me. Sometimes he would look up and make eye contact and then look away again, like I was just another piece of furniture in the room. Megan never attended the visits. I never saw her face again after that afternoon in the living room. Not in person. Not at the hearings. Not anywhere. She had removed herself from my orbit completely. Not out of hatred. Out of something much colder than that. Out of a decision that I was no longer someone she needed to engage with at all. Year 2. I stopped going to the visits. Not all at once. I missed one first. Then another. Then I called and said I wasn't coming and the social worker said okay and that was that. Nobody fought me on it. Nobody called to ask why. I think they were relieved. I told myself I was doing it for Oliver. That my presence was confusing him. That it was better for him to have one stable home with one stable set of parents and not have to process a man who showed up once a week and meant nothing to him. That was partly true. But the other part, the part I can barely admit even now, is that it hurt too much to sit in that room and watch my son look through me like I wasn't there. It hurt in a way I couldn't survive every week. So I stopped. And the worst part is that stopping felt like the most responsible thing I had ever done as a father. Year 3. I am 34 now. It has been 3 years since the night Oliver was born. I work at the smaller company. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment now, even though it is just me. One of the bedrooms has a bed in it that Oliver has never slept in. I bought it anyway. I don't know why. Maybe because having it there makes me feel like the possibility still exists. Even though it doesn't. I have no relationship with Megan. I have no relationship with Diane. I have no relationship with Oliver. I have a son. He is 3 years old. He calls another man Dada. He has no memory of me. He may never have one. I did this. Not Megan. Not Diane. Not the circumstances or the stress or the loneliness or any of the other things I could have blamed it on if I had wanted to. I did this. Every choice was mine. Every night I chose Diane over Megan, I chose it. Every time I picked up the phone and lied, I chose it. Every time I looked at my pregnant wife and felt nothing but the pull of something reckless and selfish, I chose it. And now I live with the result of all those choices. In an apartment with an empty bedroom. Watching, from the outside, through the occasional update from Megan's sister, a man I have never met raise the son I will never know. Someone reading this might think the worst part is losing Megan. It isn't. Megan made the right call. Every single one. She saw who I was and she protected her son from me. That is exactly what a good mother does. The worst part is Oliver. The worst part is that he will grow up and he will ask about me someday. And when he does, every single person in his life will tell him the truth. Because there is no version of this story where I come out looking like anything other than what I am. A man who chose himself. Over his wife. Over his son. Over everything that mattered. And some choices don't get second chances. They just get consequences. For the rest of your life. Every single day. I don't get to be the dad who messed up and found his way back. I'm just the dad who messed up. If you are reading this and your wife is pregnant, or your child is young, or someone in your life is trusting you with something they can never get back, understand this: the people who love you are not going to wait forever. And the people you choose in the dark are never going to be worth what you lose in the light.